It's 12 o'clock on July the 7th. I call the meeting in order of the Historic Resources Board at 12 o'clock. Thank you. I'll look at the, just for those who may or may not be interested or online, Zoom webinar participation is available for members of the public. The Zoom webinar ID and link are available on the posted agenda on the city website. So can we have roll call, please?
Board Member Munoz?
Present.
Board Member Callender?
Present.
Board Member Shim?
Present.
Board Member Mazgai?
Present.
Board Member Wadsworth?
Present.
Chair Hirahara?
Present. Thank you. Welcome to the Historic Resources Board. We have staff introduction at this time, please.
Yesenia Segovia, Assistant Planner.
Grant Leonard, Planning Manager.
At this time, is there any public comment? Public comment is restricted to 2 minutes and for subjects that are not on today's agenda. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. We'll go to the consent agenda. Item 25, well, approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting, 2025. They were part of the agenda, meeting packet. If there's any questions, if you don't have that, we can put it on the share screen. Any questions or comments from the board about or corrections for the June 2nd minutes?
I have two. The first would be the correct address for the Wincoop home is 14 Los Laureles. It is not Los Sorelas.
Are there any other corrections or additions to the minutes, June 2nd?
The other is, and I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it later in the meeting, we can do it there. But in Grant's comments about the Historic Survey Workshop, Historic Context Statement, he mentioned, confirmed the minutes mentioned, confirmed the context statement, provides the historical framework by era and style, supporting future evaluations. While it does not include district recommendations directly, district mapping is part of Page and Turnbull's broader scope. So I'm just wondering, why doesn't it include district recommendations directly?
Why don't we put that, it's not really it's a kind of an item for discussion as opposed to correction to the minutes. So could you address that later?
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Board Member Callender moved to accept the minutes from the meeting, and Board Member Shin seconded. We have a roll call, please.
Board Member Munoz?
Yes.
Board Member Callender?
Yes.
Board Member Shim?
Yes.
Board Member Mazgai?
Yes.
Board Member Wadsworth?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Abstention.
Chair Hirahara?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Next consideration is the annual election of Historic Resources Board Chairman and Vice Chairman. It was presented at the last meeting, and so we had nominees for Chair Michael Mazgai, Vice Chair Eloise Shim. Are there any other nominations from the floor at this time? Could I have a motion to accept the nominations for Chair and Vice Chair for the year 2025-26? So moved by Board Member Munoz.
Second.
Seconded by Callender. Any discussion? Proceed to the vote. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Member Munoz?
Yes.
Board Member Callender?
Yes.
Board Member Shim?
Yes.
Board Member Mazgai?
Yes.
Board Member Wadsworth?
Yes.
Chair Hirahara?
Yes. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Congratulations to the new chair. We're going to pass the gavel. And the meeting is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to begin by thanking our, I guess we could call him our previous chair, Larry Hirahara, for an excellent job of his duties for 2 years. It'll be a hard act to follow, so thank you very much.
I think it's next page.
So under the administrative reports area, our first item is the City of Oakland Home Rehab Guide. And the recommendation being made is discussing the City of Oakland with their guide, its relevance, and how its context and approach can serve as a resource for Salinas's home rehab initiatives and other guides for historic properties. So open for discussion.
Yeah, so if I may, from the staff, included in the agenda packet was the PDF of Oakland's Rehab Right, which had been provided by Chair Basgai. And also, we have some additional resources we can review, including the Secretary of Interior as well as the National Historic Preservation. So we have those pages to pull up, but certainly happy to discuss Oakland's guide and then how we can either include it on our city website or include the other resources.
So what is the board's, what are the thoughts about Rehab Right? Is it, might it be a useful guide for Salinans to consult regarding historic properties, how to restore them, nuts and bolts of what's involved, how to identify the style of their home?
It seems to be very comprehensive and descriptive. I think it's a really good guide. Are we able to just simply adapt it or use it from the City of Oakland, or do we need to contact them?
Good question. Yeah, I have already contacted them, and they have no problem and are using it as a complete guide. If we should want to paraphrase it or quote it, just a small section, then we would then need to give credit as well whenever we do that. But
Yep.
as long as we give credit on the website for the City of Oakland providing us with this, they have no problem and are actually happy that we're interested in using it.
Great.
Well, I'll comment that I did sort of browse through it, and I think it's excellent reference. These drawings are really wonderful. And it's more condensed than the Virginia McAllister book that I recommended. And it does really focus on rehabilitating and preserving these different kinds of styles. And it goes pretty in-depth, although it's not so detailed, but it goes pretty in-depth about what you can do and how you can do it with the different restoration and preservation. So I think it's really fabulous, you know, really good.
I also like the do-it-yourself information, because some homeowners are pretty handy, so it reviews those. It also is great in that it shows how to rehab visually and how not to do it visually. So you actually get those images and you go, ooh, yeah, that really doesn't look very nice. That really is inappropriate.
This is Larry Hirahara. It seems to be a great resource, so I think it should be included in as a resource for HRB and our website.
Wow.
The city of Spreckles has a very detailed guidelines or something similar to this, but this is all residential in there. And they are very thorough. They have a map and it's color coded, and it gives you all of the guidelines of how to use the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, which is also that we can use. But Spreckles has a very, very comprehensive way of explaining how you can do about rehabilitation, alteration, and so forth.
Is that specific to the Spreckles style of houses, or does it cover all styles?
In general, because the houses, it talks about the different styles that it has. Also, our guidelines has a section that explains even locally all of the different styles and buildings that we have and how to go about it. It will be to complement this, and I know the next level, more comprehensive report that we're going to have is going to include that. But it's good to have as a reference the one from Oakland.
Yes.
Yeah, I see no reason why we can't have more than one guide for the public to use. I think it's a great beginning step if the board decides or recommends that Rehab Right be part of the city website.
And it tells you.
What I also like about it is it's a much wider assortment of architectural styles. I'm not familiar with the Spreckles one, Sal, so maybe you can send that in to Grant and Yesenia, and it could be discussed at the next meeting. There's no reason we can't have more than one, but you know, I think Carmel also has something like this, but Salinas, I think, has a much wider assortment of architectural styles. So, I haven't seen the Spreckles one like I mentioned, but the Oakland one really gives you specifics that neither the Salinas Historic Resources Guide from '89 provides. It does discuss architectural styles and periods. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Rehab Right.
Well, is that something we have to wait until the next meeting to adopt? Or do we want to take a look at the one from Spreckles as well? And maybe adopt them both at the same time if it you know, makes sense to have multiple, as you say. I agree.
Well, I think we can do it that way if you like. I think, would we recommend that this be, that Rehab Right be adopted and included in our website? And then we would vote on that in next month's meeting? Is that the correct procedure?
So just to clarify, wouldn't be adopting these, but we can certainly add it to our website as a resource, and that can just be made now as a recommendation from the board to please update the website with this as an additional link for a resource.
So that's something that actually could be done today then?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so I see no reason not to move forward and recommend that this be added, and at our next meeting, review other potential guides for the public to use, and if we like them, add them as well.
I think we should have a subcommittee to study this so we can make the proper recommendations, analyze all of the existing and similar guidelines to follow. Because Monterey County has a very comprehensive one. And they do always updating and even instructing staff. The HRRB for Monterey County even has a subcommittee that even trains the staff of Monterey County or how to go about it on any level, including demolition by neglect and so forth. And how, and also any fines that can be used so we can prevent for demolishing historical sites. like what happened with the hot springs over there in
Rizal Springs?
yeah,
Mhm.
and so forth. And I think we should wait. I think we don't have to, accelerate this. Take our time, review what the resources that we have, and see how we can merge and have a very proper one for Salinas.
Well, that would be fine, if that's what the board wants to do. I don't see any reason, though, why the Oakland rehab right can't be made available immediately. And if we decide that we really want to create one unique for Salinas, that requires a lot of monthly meetings with the subcommittee, and fine-tuning it and then writing it just to apply to Salinas. That's a pretty long process. We've waited this long to have anything immediately available to the public. And this is one of our primary missions as HRB, and we haven't moved forward with this since we were established. And it would be nice to have something available immediately for the public to see, for those that are interested. And I have no problem with getting a more developed guide in the future that's unique to Salinas. But that's a very long process, I think. So you have to think of, I'm a homeowner, I just bought my new home, what identity is it? When was it built? How should it look like? Are the current windows appropriate? They need to be maintained. What do I replace them with? We have nothing to support that homeowner currently. So I think this would be a beginning step in the right direction, and we can always change things later. And it's a great idea to have something unique to Salinas, but I just see it taking a fair amount of time before we actually have the final product to do that. So,
Is it my understanding, these are just suggestions, correct? There aren't any requirements here, so there isn't really any downside to making it available to the public, it would seem.
yeah, it's almost like we're a architectural library. So someone who's interested, well, gee, what do I do with my home? Oh, here's Rehab Right. Maybe there's something there I could use to help me. And it's something right away that can be used. Is it the guide exclusively for us? I doubt it. But at least it's a beginning, so the public has something to use.
Sal, is there some part of it, Sal, that you've seen that you think is misinformation or inappropriate information, or are you just wanting to get one consolidated? Or
I think it's part of our mission is to provide information how to rehab according to the guidelines, our national guidelines, and I'm sure the City of Oakland has thought of that as well, but so I don't see any downside. It's just a guide for people to use because we've done a little homework finding it for them, and good, it's there to use. If they don't want to use it, that's,
Yeah, I just was wondering if Sal have you seen something in this one that you're curious about?
The Secretary of Interior has very comprehensive guidelines for this. What we can do as a committee is to make maybe a simplified form by using, as an example, the Spreckels guidelines. They have a very hands-on for people to understand, and even have a special subcommittee or having two experts of following guidelines in our board, just like other cities and counties have. They select like one or two architects to go as a subcommittee and go with the homeowners or the builder owners to discuss what are the plans for them or adaptive reuse and or alterations of their buildings before they even start doing their plans. So they can have a base and don't spend money, because some of them, we review one house in Carmel, that the homeowner spent over $20,000 to remodel a historical house and did not follow the Secretary of Interior's. And then the subcommittee went and looked at the building and spoke with the architect and Carmel. And then we found a way to, following the Secretary of Interior's, how to separate any alterations that cannot be seen from the public way and can be easily be dismantled and have the original house intact. In other words, we had to respect the architecture and alter that and have a very explicit way of distinguishing the original from the new. Okay? And that has also on the spreckles. So I think we should give opportunities for us. I can bring copies for the spreckles so we can see it. You know, and the Oakland is good, it's great, but we should do it locally. You know, how can we go about our local people can understand, you know, these guidelines by having them very clearly explained and presented to them?
Yeah, all of that's very true, and I just wonder why Carmel's planning department didn't catch the changes when they were approving them. I assume they went through, got permits to do this, so it seems like the fault lays there, that the homeowner spent all this money and it wasn't the correct way to do things.
No, the city doesn't not have to do anything with it.
What was your point then for bringing that up?
No, it is the planning and building department working together to follow the guidelines. It was actually the professional that did not follow the Secretary of Interior's and or the local guidelines to do the exactly.
I get that, but why wouldn't the government, why wouldn't the city officials have caught that and said, no, you can't do this for these reasons?
No, they do have the guidelines, but he did not follow those. That's why we have a subcommittee that reviews that and helps the owner and the architect guide them on how they can go about any alterations or changes on the historical building. Like the city is not responsible for the architect and or the owner to do that. It is up to like the HRB or HRRB to give them help and review to follow those Secretary of Interiors, and then we only recommend to the city in different levels. City Council, Planning Department, Public Works, and so forth. We only recommend, but we get to be experts to review those. We have to be up to date to the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, and then adapt it to our area.
So like Pacific Grove, I know, has an architectural review committee that's required to go through in order to do a modification, and it's made up of a bunch of architects. I'm assuming Carmel probably has something similar. Salinas, we don't have an architectural review committee. We basically put that onus on the planning department. So it's a little different scenario, I think, what you're talking about, the way that it works, than it would work here currently. And I like the idea of adopting some sort of a plan specifically for Salinas. But I think in the interest of going forward with the Mills Act and with giving some guidance, I think it would be good to at least post this on the website. Obviously, people still have to go to the planning department if they want to do something. But this, I think, is good to put up now, and then to do what you're talking about, which is to look into some specific things that would be a guide for people, specifically in Salinas, doing something. But at least this gets people thinking and understanding what needs to be done in and to try to keep them, adherent to the architectural standards that we want to keep for these historic buildings.
Can I interject something? So I think that this is a good guide, and it's a natural following in the step of, we just put out the frequently asked questions, both in English and Spanish, and inviting the public to respond to that. And that is sort of just piquing the interest of the general. I think we found that the general public doesn't know that much about it here in Salinas, and that this is a good follow-through, so that if they are interested in it, they can get more information about it without having to really, it might put the general public off if there's too much information, and they'll just say, this is too much. I don't even want to think about it. But in this way, it's kind of a natural step in our journey, if you will, of trying to kind of get the general public informed about historic resources here in Salinas.
So it sounds like we might be interested in having a vote as to whether we should include Rehab Right in our website. So maybe we should have a vote for that. And I think, Sal, it's a good idea to have a subcommittee to dig into this further and come up with something that is also a valuable asset and supports people who want to rehab right. Because I think Eloise is right. A lot of our the locals do need some guidance. It's a lot of information, and you don't want to get too specific. Keeping it more general and delving into wiring and plumbing and how you replace stairs and all of that's very useful information. We have nothing to offer currently. So
I move to have the rehab rights posted to our website.
I'll
okay,
second.
do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. So can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Munoz?
Yes.
Board Member Calendar?
Yes.
Board Member Shim?
Yes?
Board Member Mazgai?
Yes.
Chair Mazgai? Board Member Hirahara?
Yes.
Oh, Board Member Wadsworth?
Yes.
Passed. So on Sal's recommendation for a subcommittee, Sal, did you want to head that? And anyone, if you agree, who would like to join him in coming up with that?
Yes.
So Sal agrees to head this subcommittee. Do we have any volunteers to work with him?
Mike?
So the two architects are going to lead us. Great. All right, so moving forward. Item 25-280, discuss duties and powers of Historic Resource Board regarding preservation, demolition of historic structures.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Both related to our Chinatown property, but also there was a discussion about historic properties in Watsonville and really what the role of this board is in commenting on the preservation or demolition of structures. And so I wanted to just reference our municipal code, Chapter 3, if we could pull that up. It really is a very limited, if we go down to duties and powers, scroll down a little bit, Yesenia. A little further. There we go. So section 3-02.04 really outlines the limitations of this body. And for recommendations on demolition, it really is for properties that are listed on the City of Salinas's historic property survey. And then you can meet and confer with people who are interested in making major modifications to their property. But that's pretty much it in terms of this HRB's role in demolition. And then on preservation, there's a bit more related to public outreach and making sure the survey's up to date, which we're doing, et cetera. So with that, happy to open it for conversation or questions, but this is the guiding rules for this body.
So do you have any comments?
I have a comment that as individuals, we're encouraged to make statements, but I was impressed with what Eloise brought forward. But how do we inform, let's say, our colleagues without violating the Brown Act? That would be a potential problem, like mass email.
Correct. So the Brown Act is California's public meeting law. We had a presentation last year from our city attorney about that. And really what you want to avoid is serial conversations or group chat about items that could come before this board that you would make a decision on. But you're welcome to have conversations about items that are never going to come to this board, like a property in Watsonville or somewhere else in the state, but really limiting your conversations about what may come to this board here in public.
So when you say what may come to the board, well, I don't think anyone has a magic crystal ball that we can anticipate. I happen to be walking down the street and I see, oh, a really beautiful building on Capitol Street. Eloise, did you know that building at this address? Sal, do you know that? Oh, a year from now, all of a sudden, the owner wants to demolish it. I'm being facetious here, but so are we in violation of this then? Because I admired the architecture of this building and wanted to bring it to some other members' attention who admire architecture as well.
No, not in that case. I think general conversations about buildings or aesthetics here in Salinas are fine. Like if you knew in next month or 2 months, because of our agenda, we're going to be talking about something. And then you say, well, let's prepare, guys, as a team, so we're ready for this. Then that is not a public discourse, and that would be in violation of the Brown Act.
Okay, good. And then just to be clear, I could write to Dean and Michael, and I'm not violating anything because it's just the three of us, correct?
Correct. You have to avoid having a majority. However, in the event that three of you have a conversation and then one of the three of you go and share that conversation with a fourth person, then suddenly you have gone to the majority and you've violated the Brown Act. So it's can be tricky that way.
But that's really based on something on the agenda or what will probably soon be an agenda item.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have a question, because since I'm the I guess guilty person that sent the email about the Weeks building in Watsonville, which is going to be up for some kind of discussion about delisting it. And since the Weeks building in Watsonville we have that prominent architect he has buildings here in Salinas as well as other places. And I mean, when I sent it, I wasn't trying to violate any, I don't know, act, the Brown Act. What I was trying to do is sort of act as an ex parte to people that have come to some of the meetings. We've had those meetings in community meetings in Chinatown and here, for instance. and how they've voiced their concern about having things demolished here in Salinas. So when I sent that about, about the Weeks building in Watsonville, I just kind of wanted people to be aware of what people in other cities and jurisdictions feel about that, including ours. So I wasn't trying to kind of, get a consensus about what we should do, but just kind of inform the board about other buildings and how people in other jurisdictions respond to demolition or not demolition. So I just kind of failed to see how it could be a Brown Act violation, but I take it as kind of a friendly reminder as not to violate.
I don't think you intended to violate the Brown Act, but when I read that, there was a conversation which sort of directed that we should take some sort of a position as a board about that particular thing, and it was essentially two things. One, it was outside of our jurisdiction because of the side of the area, and it borderline on creating a Brown Act violation.
Oh,
So that, I just wanted to make that clear, rather than, I could have resent the email and said, well, here's a purview, read this section. But I think it's important to have a conversation like this so we all understand that, so we don't want to violate the Brown Act.
yeah. Yeah.
So, in regards to demolition, Monterey County has updated demolition guidelines due to the Paradise project that unfortunately is totally demolished. And they have a section for demolition by neglect. That is to a building that they just let it fall apart and said we cannot no longer keep that building because it's not only usable and repairable, unless somebody can go to the extreme and they said, we'll put all the pieces together and put it back, like the Victorian house that there is in Watsonville, There was a committee and they raised some money to stabilize it, and then it vanished. But for us, if we have any building following, I guess, what Monterey County has, that we could adapt that to our city. And they even are preparing to have fees to be paid or money has to be retained from whoever violated the law of demolishing this historical building to a certain amount. Or any other way of controlling that or preventing from demolition. Yes. It is up to the committee, like our HRB, is for us, if we find something or community reports that there is a building that's being demolished, and it was a beautiful building, or whatever description they say, we can go and identify if we see we have in our list that building as an example, or we have an evaluator, a historical person there, or a subcommittee to go and look at it, and then to be presented to our board, and we follow the guidelines, and then make our proper recommendations to the city, and the city decides what to do.
Yeah,
I would say conversely about, demolishing, but our role in the HRB is to encourage the preservation of certain properties. So, for instance, in San Francisco now, they have the Huntington Hotel on Nob Hill. Their wanting to put that on the list of HRB. And also the Art Institution in San Francisco, that's going to be, it's a project that's, a new project that's going to be rebuilt, the San Francisco Art Institute. So we want to be encouraging things that already exist to, you know, be viable projects.
Could I ask a question? I think we would have to scroll up on this page, but what is our definition of an historic resource?
Correct. So it's right there, 3-02.02, Section D. A historic resource is either nationally registered, state, or has been voluntarily designated at the local level. So it has to have that designation process in order to be a historic resource by our code.
So, National Registry, State, California Registry, or volunteer. So, can the city of Salinas designate something as being historic and therefore then subject to the recommendations of this group? Or is it only if it's already on a list and someone volunteers to put their property on the list?
Correct. It has to go through the designation process. So the property owner has to do that. So the city could do it for city-owned properties, but not for properties that are privately owned. And there's a designation process in the code here.
So our jurisdiction of an example of someone seeing a nice house that they like, they think is historic, and someone wants to demolish it, we don't have any, we're not in a position to have any restrictions on that demolition if they're not on a list, correct?
That's correct. And that's, again, why this updated survey we're doing is so important. We're getting a new look at it since 1989.
Well, and even if they are on the list, if the house is in such disrepair to the point where it's condemned, I would assume that even if we really wanted to preserve it, if the city came in and said it's a hazard, then the city's going to override us.
Well, we kind of have that condition right now with the Republic Cafe, don't we?
Exactly.
Well, actually, 34, 38. So can we discuss that, or is it an update?
I have it as a future agenda item.
Okay. Still there.
So with, just to be clear, the city of Salinas has no city landmarks, is that correct?
The Steinbeck is a city line.
A city landmark. I know the Steinbeck is on the National Register, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, it's not owned by the city.
the house, yes.
So are you aware of any city landmarks?
The jail, isn't it a city landmark, the jail?
That's on the National Register as
Oh,
well.
okay. Oh, okay. I know there's the city, and then California State, and then national.
Right.
There's
The-
different registers.
Exactly, but I'm not aware of any city landmarks, which I find curious, but maybe I just don't know of them, that's why I'm asking.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to review our list.
But maybe that's something we should have.
Yeah.
Most cities have a city landmark process, and even if it doesn't go beyond the city's jurisdiction to become a state, you know, or on the national level, we still have a number of significant homes here or buildings that should be city landmarks, and that's something I think we need to address. So, how do we do that?
Isn't a survey going to do that?
It certainly should bring to our attention, I'm hoping it's going to bring to our attention many, many buildings. And with that information, it would allow us to move forward. But I'm not sure there's a process we have, is I guess what I'm getting at. How do we, as a board, recommend that this building should be city landmark number one?
We
I
have,
know San Juan Bautista has city landmarks.
city-
Riverside does.
our city, within our city, we have two well-known landmarks. The old courthouse in the old jail. And they are national landmarks.
I think we have approximately 10. I might be off one.
Yeah.
I've done the list, and I can send it to you, Grant, and maybe you
Yeah.
could, then we would have it, and then city as well as the board would have that to consult. So I think we have approximately that many, and it would be useful because then they'd have their own flagging if something's ever done, or just so everyone knows, just you could go on the city website and, oh, here's our National Register buildings. And I know it gets complicated sometimes with the inventory, and this is why I'm curious about Page and Turnbull's, because we have some county-owned buildings in Salinas that it's kind of like, it's a no man's land, you know, they're not under City of Salinas jurisdiction in some way. One that comes to mind is the Reed and Cortlet Juvenile Detention Hall that's on Natividad at Chaparral. That's a beautiful building. Was built by Carmel Builder Murphy. Oakland Architects designed it, and it's a county building, but it still should be included in the Page and Turnbull inventory, so we're aware of what physically is here, I think. But anyway, getting back to city landmarks, I'd like to know what that process is, if it's already been set up, and then we could be educated as a board, or maybe there are some city landmarks that we just don't know about, but I haven't been able to find them.
Yeah, let's have that as a future agenda item.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, Grant, anything else about our duties regarding preservation and demolition? Or is that?
No, just encourage the board to come here as your first source, and then we can review as a group as needed, like today. But
Okay. And so a future agenda item will be the City of Salinas landmarks. If there are any, and if not, what's the process, or do we as a board need to come up with the process? And maybe we could have a subcommittee do that, and we could start this rolling then. Okay, next item on the agenda is the audit and flagging of historic resources.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick update on how I'm rolling along with the flagging and audit. So I'm halfway through out of 6 pages, so I am 3 out of 6 pages left, and I am hoping that I could be done by the end of this month. It's very tedious, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing any address that does pop up. So that's where I am at with the flagging and audit.
I'm not clear. Maybe I just didn't hear you correctly, or where are we? Has it been set up so that you or anyone in planning department or whatever department's responsible sees immediately with a APN number or and an address? You probably need both, because didn't we discuss at our last meeting that the Republic Cafe or other properties on Soledad have multiple APN numbers or addresses? So that can confuse, rightfully so, if you're the city employee checking, oh, it's not on here, but the address is. So how are we going to prevent that?
So right now, my process at the moment is just double checking to make sure that these addresses, the list of addresses that I have, are flagged. And if they aren't, then I'll make a comment or a mark on it. Mm-hmm. And after that, I don't have the authority to physically go into our Track It program and flag it. So at the moment, I'm going through all of these pages and making sure that these addresses are flagged. And if they're not, then I'll make a comment.
So Yesenia, what happens then once you've done all of this detail work? A supervisor then will flag these properties and APN numbers?
Yes.
And once that happens, will the board be notified and shown how it is, so we see how it works?
yeah, we'll have a report back.
So are we looking at a couple of months from now, 6 months from now?
probably a couple months, maybe 2 months.
Because I know it's going to get more involved once the new survey is handed in.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay?
6 pages of, what are the 6 pages?
That's our current 1989 survey of historic properties. So we're going through address by address by address, and we're checking it against our permit software to make sure that they're flagged. That's the audit that Yesenia is currently doing.
Okay.
So you're going through, I forget the number, I could check, but it was a little over 100 properties that were listed in the 89 survey. That's what you're working with to flag everything, right?
Yes. So it's
Okay.
more than 100.
So I'm curious, what's the expectation when a flagged property comes in to the planning staff for some sort of work, remodel? What's the process then?
Well, then it is sent for an additional review. So depending on your permit, go to planning, building, fire department may review. If it's flagged as a historic resource, it comes to our department to review as the historic significance of the work.
So when that happens, I presume, as Sal was mentioning, the national guidelines that are supposed to be followed, the city employee is going to consult with those to make sure that whatever the request is for the permit is done correctly.
Has the city adopted national standards for those projects?
Well, we reference back to our historic code here, and it does mention the Secretary of Interior.
So anybody
Also-
on that list, on those 6 pages, any property on that list is now subject to historic, national standards?
Yeah, let me get back to you on that. It's a
Because I'm
technical
just
question.
curious, I'm a kind of a libertarian on this subject, and did those people decide that they wanted to be under those restrictions?
Yeah, let me get back to you on that.
The historical guidelines are very explicit of what potential historical building can be qualified to be historical and be a landmark. We also have the California Historical Code that we have to follow as to complement the historical preservation.
I have a comment or a question also about our new sort of survey thing that we have online in Spanish and English. So are we as council members going to be included in what the responses were? Like, will you send us, how they do in the council meetings? If somebody writes in a comment, it's available. Well, it's available to the public, but will we, as council members, will it be given to us what those responses were? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. So the survey is for the historic context statement. It's part of the survey update that we're doing. So all the public responses will be included in that report when that's presented. So you won't get here's a public comment like the city council does, but it'll be included in the historic context statement that's currently being drafted, and that'll be presented in the next several months to the board.
Okay.
Another question, I guess. That list, the 6-page, and then the new list, I know at other meetings we have discussed the idea that when properties are sold or purchased, someone should know if there are any of these restrictions on that property. So the real estate world somehow needs to be involved in this process, because that can happen without building or planning knowing anything's going on. Someone buys a house not knowing that they're under restrictions that they had no idea of. So is there some way, is there a realtor, I don't know how you connect with that whole process in a way that would be comprehensive so that you are assured that people, when they buy a property in Salinas, if it's on a list, they know it. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that could happen, but
Yeah, so let's look into that too, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that be the property owner's, responsibility, I guess? I know if I was buying a property, it's a big responsibility, it's a big financial responsibility. I would, especially if I knew it was built, even up until the 70s or something, I would check the historic resources, survey that we have, the one right now. I myself would check it.
Yeah, I just don't know that everyone, I doubt that everyone would.
I'm not sure
so-
everybody would do that, but I would. And I think real estate people, I think that real estate people would give that information to their clients, wouldn't they?
It usually comes through when they're going through the mortgage process and there's a history search. And things like liens on the property, property lines that are inaccurate, or if a property is across the property line on somebody else's, that should all be in there, but it's usually associated with the deed of trust and kept by the assessor's office.
Yeah.
And so that would really be the job of the assessor's office to publish those reports during escrow. Whether they do or not, I have no idea. There's certain legal obligations. I don't know if a historic building is one of them.
Just being on the city's list, unlikely to be on a deed.
No, I don't think so.
All the more reason for us to have historic plaques on property, right?
Yeah.
I think with the 89 survey and the really brief edition that was done, we do have the addresses of those properties. I think they're, what I hope is going to happen once the Page and Turnbull information is provided and accepted and all that, is we will also have the actual report per property. So you can see maybe who the architect might have been, when it was built. We had those for the 89 survey, but for whatever reason, they are not included on the Salinas website. So it makes it difficult for a homeowner or anyone to find out more about the property, which I think is unfortunate, because it would help educate the public to know the information about this property. So maybe once we have the Page and Turnbull information, the board can review that, and maybe something can be devised among us that, as a suggestion, that on the website, is your property historic? Find out. And you click that tab, and here's all the addresses. It'd be real user-friendly to use, and we'd all learn more about each of the unique homes that were on the survey. So Grant, and we're running a little out of time, unless we still want to talk some more. And I'm happy to make this a future agenda item if we would like, but my earlier comment with the minutes, I want to get back to that, because I think now's the time to do it, because otherwise we're just the membership. So did we want to make that a future agenda item, or did we want to talk about it today?
The historic context statement comment from Rob?
You had said that in the minutes, the quote was, while it does not include district recommendations directly, district mapping is part of Page and Turnbull's broader scope. And I'm just wondering, why doesn't it provide district recommendations? Whether we as a city decide to use them, they're the experts at doing this. So I'd like them to give us the district names and boundaries and map and all that, so they're available to use. I mean, isn't that part of what we want the survey to provide for us? I mean, why do we want to then have to go back and redo this or add this?
So I think it was just a distinction between the historic context statement versus the survey. And so the survey, that final report when it comes out, will have a discussion of districts, but the historic context statement, sort of step one, is just talking about the themes and the history of the city.
Okay.
Then later on, the districts will be
Like
included.
it will be provided then?
Correct.
Okay, good.
So the difference between, there'll be the difference between the existing districts that we have now, and after their survey, they will give maybe a recommended survey, or a recommended districts that they would want to, that they would advise? Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, because currently we only have 3 proposed districts from the 89 survey. We have no historic districts, amazingly. So it's long overdue, I think, that Salinas has them, and a lot of those, in just the 3 that were suggested, maybe the boundaries, Page and Turnbull will advise us. Maybe they'll say, oh, the district should be much wider, or next to those are, here's some more recommended district names, or in the Alisal or in North Salinas, here's some additional districts. So then with that information, we can move forward with their findings.
I agree.
So anything else on this topic?
No, I think,
Add something.
Go ahead.
I think the city should contact the board of realtors about the properties that have been possible being designated historical or qualifies to be historical, so they can be in their agenda, or they can even have their own red flag system. Monterey County has contacted the Board of Realtors on the Monterey County historical sites. So when it comes, just like Mike is saying, what if we have a client? And what are my responsibilities if I buy this house? And what can I do? Actually, there are benefits to be a historical. And then that's one way the architects or the realtors can tell them, you can have these advantages to you to preserve the building, like the Mills Act. They give you 20% savings from your property taxes, and you can use to keep in good shape your historical building. And it's deductible. Right?
Also, with the Board of Realtors, or whatever the right organization is, if you see listings in other cities, those that are more sensitive about the historic nature of properties, the realtors are actually mentioning who the architect is, when it was built, maybe the original family. That all adds to resale value. So it really is something that helps realtors, really. It increases their knowledge, and it makes the property more desirable to other people who respect that information. So it's a win for everybody.
Right.
All right, if nothing else, we have CPF membership. Next agenda item.
Yeah, just want to let you guys, the board, know that the CPF membership is active. So you guys can now log in, and it's going to be the same login that I'll share with the whole board. And you guys can start using it to sign up for workshops or webinars.
Excellent. So do we need a certain passcode, or?
I have that passcode and the username.
So you'll email it to us, and then we can go ahead and get busy?
Yes. Yeah.
Good, excellent. Well, that's really good news, long overdue. It's going to educate us much more. So we thank the city of Salinas for doing this, and Grant for your efforts to get it done.
well, Yesenia did all the hard work in getting us registered.
Me too. Okay, next would be future agenda items. So what I mentioned, I assume will be on it, so I don't have to repeat that. Any other items that members would like to include?
Okay, I don't want to necessarily include this for a future item, but for other business, I want to comment and let people know that the Steinbeck House, the Victorian, which is about a block away from here on Central, has a summer tours program going on. And so in July and August, there are about 10 opportunities to go and take the tour at the Steinbeck Victorian. And I myself went yesterday, and it's fabulous. So I think this is something new, but there's a small fee to take the tour, but it's really worthwhile to go and take it. So I wanted to announce that.
That's good to know. Is this something that the city has been much more active? At least I've been getting a lot more emails from the city in different categories. Is this something that could be shared in one of the city email blasts or somewhere on the website for people who are interested when they kind of go into the tabs for historic buildings that they would learn about this?
Yeah, we can check with our public information officer, see if we can put something out.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know what, I mean, usually tourists coming, they check, I don't know what part of the website for the city or things that they should do, so maybe whatever web page that is, they could put this information, because it really is very nice. And I think it's the first time they've had a program like that during the summer. You know, they have the restaurant there. You can go and have lunch there. But this is the first time that it's a tour.
And did you want to pass that around? Maybe
Yeah.
the notice or ad could just be used and that would be what's posted.
Sure. You can have it.
It's in the Salinas.
I can see it on the, you can check out on the website. If you go to the Steinbeck House website, I'm sure they'll have all the info, like which Sundays they are, you know, the dates in July and August.
Several times.
Okay, so any future agenda items to be added?
3438 Soledad Street.
Okay. Anything else? No?
Just a curiosity, does anyone else have a conflict with the 4th? If not, that's fine. I'm headed to a funeral in Northwest, and it's that weekend. Probably won't be back by the 4th, so.
So then the following August date would be the 11th, is that it?
That's the next Monday.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at my schedule at home, but I could get back to you.
What date is that?
Okay.
So you're suggesting the 11th?
The 11th, yeah, I'm back that,
Oh, August the 11th.
yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah. No problem.
Seemed to be good.
So,
John has a problem with it, so. That'd be you, Mike.
Let me know.
yeah, I just have to check at home. If I can get back to you today, I'll get back to Grant and then,
Okay.
and
If it
then
doesn't
we,
change, then that's fine. I'll just
okay, all right.
be there.
Anything else before we adjourn?
Good.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
It's like 1:09.
And congratulations.